when, as it says at the end of that book, all people did what seemed right in their own eyes. We all kind of know how well that usually goes. It's kind of a tough time in Israel. Israel has long suffered under various judges who initially seemed pretty good, and then they tried to pass on their role to their children, who often weren't as good. And by begging for the king, which will be the end of this problem with the judges changing all the time, they will doom themselves to a succession of mostly increasingly bad hereditary leaders. So here we see Eli, the priest of the Lord, who is an old man, who is a good leader himself, and we have little Samuel, who, if you remember, is the son of Hannah, who longed and prayed for a child and been fertile for many years. And when Eli says she will get a child, she promises that she will bring him to the Lord and dedicate him to his service. So she has this baby boy, she weans him, and then she brings him to Elijah. So Eli and Samuel are laying down in their respective spots in the tabernacle, and they're asleep, and Samuel hears a voice calling to him. Samuel, Samuel. And there's only one person Samuel expects to be calling him in the middle of the night. And so he does what you would expect and goes running off to Eli. Here I am, Eli. You called me. And Eli, who I'm sure is a grumpy old man, who is having trouble sleeping, is a little annoyed, I'm sure. Samuel, I didn't call you. Go back to it. And this reminded me of a story in my family. My father, in a dry tavern in Green County in the 50s or 60s, was a bit of an animal whisperer. He found a baby crow and raised it. And it was incredibly tame and incredibly naughty. It loved shiny things, as crows do, and could take the keys out of car ignitions and hide them. And my grandfather had a television repair business, and so people were coming all the time to drop off or pick up their TVs, and everybody, my dad, his 6 brothers and sisters, my grandparents, were going running out of the house, shut your windows, or take your keys before the crow takes them. But sometimes the crow got them, and when he got them, he went to the top of a very tall tree beside the house. And my dad was the only one who could climb up to get them, so if dad wasn't home, you were in trouble. It was going to be a while. The crow also liked to taunt cars. So my grandparents lived across from West Bend Power, if you're familiar. It's a long, straight stretch of road where cars go very fast. And the crow thought it was super fun to make people stop going really fast. So he would walk slowly across the road and you'd hear, or he would dive on the cars. But his favorite trick was imitating voices. And my Aunt Barbara, who was the youngest, was his favorite person to play this trick on. So she would be off doing whatever she was doing, and she would hear, Barbara, Barbara. And she was convinced it was my grandmother. She would go running inside, Grandma, Mom, I didn't call you. And she would go back to what she was doing, and a few minutes later, Barbara, Barbara. And this happened many, 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 many times. He also pooped on one of my aunt's heads. I think when she had a boy over. So he was a very unpopular crow with everybody except Dad, apparently. But that mimic reminded me of this story. So I'm sure poor Eli, who is very old, just wants a decent night's sleep. And Samuel keeps running in when somebody calls his name. So on the third interruption, Eli twigs. He realizes that it must be the Lord calling Samuel. And so he gives him directions on what to do. But honestly, I'm not sure if Eli got any more sleep after this, because he seems to know what the Lord is going to tell Eli. He seems to have a feeling what the Lord's going to tell Samuel, sorry. So Eli had been warned in the chapter before, which we didn't read, but you can read about it, about just how much God was ticked off at his family because of how bad these 2 boys were. They were out of control. They would go up to people who were in the tabernacle doing the right thing, doing the correct sacrifices, and they would say, no, no, you have to give us that other piece, which it specifically said was for the Lord. Or somebody would come to do a burnt offering, which had to be burnt. That's why it's called a burnt offering. And they would say, no, no, you have to give it to us first, because we want to roast the meat, that tastes better. And it doesn't specify exactly what they did to the young women, but they did something bad with the young women who were supposed to be serving the Lord. And Eli is warned. God says, I'm going to judge you. You're going to be in big trouble. And seemingly, he doesn't do anything about it. Eli says, hey boys, I've heard a rumor that you're being really bad, and they ignore him. And that's all he does. He doesn't remove them from the tabernacle. And we know from another story in Judges that there were Levites in other parts of Israel, so he could have just told them they had to go somewhere else. He also doesn't give them a different job. Like, you guys apparently can't be trusted with the people and the meat, so how about you go bake the bread? Or how about you go make the perfume? Or how about you go make the incense? Which were jobs that only Levites could do. He doesn't even say, hey, I'm going to have to make somebody your new supervisor because you guys are like jerks. He doesn't do any of these things. He just tells them one time that they should do something different. So in the morning, Eli asked Samuel to tell him what the Lord had said, which Samuel is very reluctant to do. Does anybody really want to tell their mentor and father figure that God says he's going to send eternal judgment on his family? Not really. And Eli's response seems kind of noble and stoic, I think, the first time you hear it. He is the Lord. Let him do what he wants. Sounds good. But as I read it a few times this week, I was struck by how different this is from how other people in the Old Testament respond to impending judgment. When the angel of the Lord tells Abraham that he has come to check on Sodom and Gomorrah because he's heard how wicked they are and he plans to destroy them, Abraham negotiates for mercy. He talks them down from, 50 or 100 all the way down to 10. If you find 10 righteous men, and God agrees. Moses begs for God not to destroy the people of Israel repeatedly as they wander in the desert because they're kind of jerks. They keep messing up, just like we would keep messing up. But Moses begs that God would be merciful to them. Later in the Old Testament, Nathan confronts David with his sin with Bathsheba, who was Uriah's wife, and says that the baby she is carrying will die. David fasts and prays and begs that God would change his mind and spare that child. God doesn't, but not because David didn't try. Even weak and foolish King Hezekiah, when told that he will die of the illness that he has, weeps and prays and begs. And before Isaiah even gets out of the forecourt of the palace, God says, go and tell Hezekiah that he's been healed. When Jonah is sent to prophesy to Nineveh, they're not even Israelites. They don't believe in God. They repent, and God is merciful, even to those heathens. But Eli simply says, it's the Lord's will. Let him do what he thinks best. He doesn't pray. He doesn't fast. He doesn't even go and tell the boys, hey, Hophni and Phineas, you're really in trouble now. You might want to clean up your act because doom is imminent. He doesn't do anything. Maybe he felt guilty. Maybe he thought the boys really were wicked and really did deserve what they had coming. I don't know. So Samuel grows up, and he is the first prophet in a while in Israel. The word of the Lord speaks through him. But The Israelites are still at war with those Philistines, as they almost always are. And in the first day's battle, when the Philistines attack, they lose 4,000 men, which sounds like a lot until we get to day 2. The troops get back to camp, and they're like, oh, what happened? How could God have let us lose? But they don't ask God. They don't check. They just get what they think is a very bright idea. To take what they apparently think is just a magic box, the Ark of the Covenant, where God himself resides between the golden cherubim whose wings have to cover their face from the glory of God. They decide this is just a toy that they should take out to the battle without asking God first. And Eli's sons are the ones who take the ark. In a different story in the Old Testament, when David's wives and children are captured by the Amalekites at Ziklag, the first thing he does is to call for the ephod and to inquire of God. He asks, shall I pursue them? And will we overtake them? Because they have a long head start. He does this before he does anything else. Yahweh is dwelling on the mercy seat, on the Ark of the Covenant, and they take it into battle with Hophni and Phinehas. And Yahweh does nothing to help them. And on the second day, 30,000 troops were killed, including Hophni and Phinehas, Eli's sons, and the Ark is captured. And if you're tempted to think that maybe God doesn't care about the ark, or that maybe he was sleeping, check out the next chapter. Check out what God does to the temple of Dagon, where they put the ark, and to the whole town of Ashdod. News of the battle reaches Eli, who is waiting for news. He's maybe up on the gate, over the gate, waiting for news by the road. And when he hears that the ark has been captured, he falls over backwards and dies. And his daughter-in-law goes into what sounds like early labor on hearing this heartbreaking news that her husband is dead, and her father-in-law is dead, and the ark of God has been carried away. And it seems like all of this is so unnecessary. I don't think Eli's punished because his